what is a real food versus what is a very processed food. And so we want to. Hey, everybody. Here are 4 reasons why diets don't work. And hint, it's not you, it's them. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Obesity Project. My name is Dr. Mark Shankman. I appreciate you giving me your time to hopefully learn a little something about dieting and learn why diets simply don't work. And so today, episode 25 of the Obesity Project, the best and worst foods for weight loss, backed by science. So, confused about what to eat for weight loss? Forget diet fads. Let's break down the science. Let's talk about what actually works. And it's not about cutting calories, it's about controlling insulin. So here's what you need to eat for lasting fat loss. We're going to get into all of that in just a couple minutes. So you need to understand one thing and one thing only. Not all foods are created equal. Some foods make you store fat while others help you burn it. So let's talk about the real fat loss diet. All right, let's get into the meat of the video. So what's the problem? What's the problem with diets? Like what's going on behind me there is that most diet advice is completely wrong. You've been misled your whole entire lives, and this is why you get on this up and down sort of fat. Gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight, and this vicious cycle continues on and on. And the reason is because most traditional diets focus on calories instead of focusing on hormones. Now, both things are equally important. I should take that back. Not equally important. Both things are important. However, the hormones dictate what actually gets done with those calories that you're eating. When insulin levels are high, it forces your body to store those extra calories as fat, or as it puts it into storage mode. So it can be put into glycogen or it can be put into fat, but the vast majority of it gets stored as body fat. So the real question isn't how much to eat, it's what to eat to keep those insulin levels low and fat burning high. So we always have to keep in mind the central driving force, the main hormone that is responsible for obesity is insulin. And the foods you eat determine whether you gain or lose fat by whether they increase or have no effect on the level of insulin. So, what are the best foods for fat loss and insulin control? So, first, we want to eat more natural whole foods. So, we want to prioritize real foods. We want to prioritize those things. To take a wonderful quote from Ben Bikman, Dr. Ben Bikman, a biochemist and a professor. He talks about eating things that don't come from boxes, bags, or have barcodes. So those are a terrific way of sort of thinking about what is a real food versus what is a very processed food. And so we want to focus on real unprocessed foods over anything that's been refined. And whole foods naturally regulate the hunger hormones like ghrelin to really prevent overeating. So we also want to avoid packaged ultra processed foods because one thing and one thing only, they've been engineered, chemically engineered in a lab to make you eat more. They're designed to be so delicious and have no restrictions on how much of that food you can eat because the companies are trying to make money, right? But they've been engineered to make you overeat. They've been engineered to spike insulin, and they've been engineered to increase hunger to the point where there's really no end in sight how much of these foods you can eat. So we want to prioritize natural, real, whole foods. The second thing we want to do is we want to prioritize healthy fats. So fat does not spike insulin the way that carbs do. So first and foremost, the biggest insulin spike you're ever going to get is from carbohydrates, particularly those refined, ultra-processed foods. But even whole carbohydrates are going to spike insulin. Next in the spectrum is protein. You are going to get an insulin spike if you eat a high level of protein. And then finally, fats. Fats have very, very minimal effects on insulin. So prioritizing healthy fats and fats not spiking the insulin is what we're looking for. We also want to eat fats that keep you full and prevent cravings. This is one of the main reasons, and I am not here to push the carnivore diet. I'm just telling you from my own personal experience, from my own sort of reason for wanting to go carnivore. One of the reasons that I did that is because I knew that it was a very satiating diet and it prevented sugar cravings and carbohydrate cravings. So some example of healthy fats are avocados, olive oil, nuts, butter, fatty fish. Meats have a lot of healthy fats in them. So studies have shown that low carbohydrate, high fat diets lead to better weight loss and improved insulin sensitivity, which is what we're actually looking for. It's the reverse of insulin resistance, where the insulin's not working well. We want our cells, our bodies to be sensitive to insulin to allow insulin to work properly. All right. We also want to choose high quality protein. And as I mentioned, protein does spike insulin to some degree, but protein increases satiety and helps build lean muscle. So we need protein to rebuild all of our muscles, all of our tissues. All of our tissues are made of protein. So our collagen that makes up skin and bones and muscle and tendons and ligaments, all of those, and ground substance that makes up our joints and the fluid that's within our joints. All of those things are made by proteins, and so we need that protein to build all of these tissues, but not too much protein. We want to focus on fat but prioritize protein, but we don't want too much because that can also spike insulin, as I mentioned. So having sort of a balance is key. In the carnivore diet, we talk about a minimum of a 1-to-1 fat to protein ratio. But as you get more experienced in carnivore, we start to increase that fat level because we want to really actually prioritize the fat over the protein. And some of the best sources of these high quality proteins: eggs, beef, chicken, fish, full fat dairy. All of these things have terrific, high quality proteins that are easily digestible and break down into the essential amino acids that we really need. So, number four, we want to control carbs and we want to focus on fiber. Now, I'm here to tell you on a carnivore diet, there's not any significant fiber in the diet, but fiber is not a necessary nutrient. You can eat a diet without any fiber. Your gut microbiome will adjust and will change to accommodate your current diet, right? So it'll move away from fiber digesting bacteria into ones that process fat and protein more and do not process the fiber. So but again, I'm not here to push you into carnivore. I'm just kind of telling you from my own experience. So not all carbs are bad. The problem is, as I mentioned before, ultra processed refined carbohydrates. So you can eat the broccoli, you can eat the asparagus, and you can eat all the vegetables that I used to eat on a regular basis before going carnivore. But I always ate not always, for the last, I would say, about 3 years, I've eaten a low carb diet, which did include plenty of whole foods and vegetables. So not too many fruits. I definitely limited the fruits, but I definitely ate a fair number of vegetables. So remember, not all carbs are bad. Whole food carbs are still better than refined carbs. You want to avoid things like white bread and pasta and processed grains and sugar. Those are the evils that we need to avoid. These are the things we need to minimize in our diet to be as healthy as we possibly can and to lose weight, of course, if that's your goal. We need to eat low glycemic, so things that do not bump our blood sugar very much. We need to eat low glycemic, fiber-rich carbs like vegetables and berries and legumes. And the fiber in those products or in those foods do help to slow digestion and do reduce insulin spikes. Of course, on a carnivore diet, and I just keep mentioning this because this is what I'm currently doing, you don't need to reduce those insulin spikes because you're not getting real big insulin spikes because you're not eating any carbohydrate. All right. So as I mentioned, number five is we want to avoid sugar and we want to avoid those highly refined carbohydrates because as we mentioned, sugar has a huge, huge spike in insulin faster than almost any other food. Now, one caveat to that is fructose. So fructose is found in soda, in juices, and in processed food. So you've probably heard of partially hydrogenated um, that's soy, but sorry, fructose. I'm blanking on the fructose that's in most processed foods, but fructose is absolutely the worst. So studies have shown that sugar consumption directly correlates with obesity and diabetes, and fructose directly correlates with fatty liver because the fructose can only be processed in the liver, and that's the first place that the fat, sort of builds up from the fructose. So what about, excuse me, what about drinks? So the best choices for drinks are things like pure water. Water is definitely their best choice. And then black coffee or tea. These are perfectly acceptable drinks. You definitely want to avoid sodas, even diet ones, which I'll get into in a minute. Fruit juices and sweetened drinks, they all spike insulin to a large degree. Now, diet soda does spike insulin without any glycemic index. It doesn't raise blood sugar and it does have no calories. However, having a sugary sweet, even though there's no sugar in it, having a sweet solution in your mouth does cause the brain to release insulin because you're expecting a sugar influx into your body. So it does trigger insulin. It does cause an insulin spike, even though there's no sugar in it and even though there's no calories. So you want to avoid the diet sodas, fruit juices, and sweetened drinks. Now, things like apple cider vinegar before meals can absolutely help blood sugar, help lower the blood sugar and lower the insulin response as in response to that blood sugar. So the takeaway from this is that you want to eat foods that keep insulin low. And I haven't even gotten into, we talked about intermittent fasting before, and intermittent, let's try that again, guys. Intermittent fasting, it's 9:22 here. It's been a long day. Um, but intermittent fasting does lower the insulin to the largest degree. But when we're looking at diets and we're looking at what types of foods we should eat or what we shouldn't eat, the takeaway is that we want to eat foods that keep the insulin low. So we want to avoid processed foods, sugar, refined grains. We want to prioritize whole foods, healthy fats, fiber, and moderate levels of protein. Now, the best diets, isn't about it isn't about calories. It's about keeping that insulin low to allow our bodies to go into fat burning mode. One of the reasons that the best diets focus on insulin levels, the reason that fasting is so efficient at weight loss is because that is the best way to decrease those insulin levels. The next best way is to monitor your diet, eat a low carb whole food, not processed, refined carbohydrate diet. Avoid the standard American diet, which is rich in all of those things. So, so it's not about what you eat. I'm sorry, it's not about how many calories you eat. It's actually about what you're eating. And those things that keep the insulin low, that's going to allow for fat burning. Um, just the one thing you always want to keep in the back of your mind, the one thing you always want to focus on is that if insulin levels are high, it's absolutely impossible to burn the energy that you're taking in while you're eating. And it's also absolutely impossible for your body to tap into all of those excess energy stores that you have as fat. The only thing that it can do is continue to shove the glucose, the extra calories, that energy into storage, into fat storage. That's what insulin is dictating. And if you want to get into fat burning mode, you want to be a fat burning machine, you've got to get those insulin levels down and you've got to keep them down at a very low level. Then your body will prioritize taking the energy source out of your body fat, which is nothing more than a store of energy, and utilize it to burn, to create energy, to create ATP for your body to do all the things that it needs to do. So, what's the biggest diet myth that you've ever heard or that you ever believed? Make sure to drop a comment below. I would love to hear some of the diet myths you've heard or some of the myths that you've been told or led to believe. Feel free to drop the comment. I'd love to continue the conversation there. And of course, by all means, share this video with someone still stuck. Let's try that again. Not suck, stuck on a low-fat diet plan. So if someone you know is still thinking it's a matter of calories in and calories out, if someone you know still believes in the standard American diet where we were told to eat a low-fat diet, which they didn't tell you, but incidentally created a high carbohydrate diet, then you're going to continue to suffer this cyclical up and down on your weight, because none of those diets are really sustainable and none of those diets are going to keep you on a weight loss plan. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Sorry, I stumbled a couple times along the way. I did want to make sure, if you saw my earlier video yesterday, I did mention how I was getting over being sick, and I have my wife's surgery coming up, and I wanted to make sure that I got these videos done. So I'm doing it late at night the night before, but so sorry for the stumbles, but I appreciate your attention. And as always, like, share, and comment. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care. Thanks so much for watching.